The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
Are you threatening?
I'm not threatening them. I'm not threatening them.
You don't know about the holy water that you can buy from Peter Popoff?
You can buy holy water? What am I doing here?
This is why God doesn't like the IRS.
Here, kids. Don't pay your taxes.
Tax fraud.
The official position of second-rate saints.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
I'm Joshua, and to my left is my friend.
I'm Joel, and to my left...
It's me, back to Caleb. We're missing Colton and Stuart, as per the norm. It's a very sad day we're missing both of them.
Very sad.
It is. Joel, Jeepers, you're both of them, apparently.
Josh, Joel, Jeepers. What's up?
Joel, what do we do on the internet?
Just messing around on a website.
Dude, I love that intro.
It's the same. It's the same every time. I ask him that, and then he goes, nothing. And then the awkward silence just hits
I
there.
love the awkward silence. I feel like that's where we catch people, is right in that little bit. So we've got secondratesaints.com where you can find everything we're doing online, our YouTube channel, our Spotify, our blog posts, our book reviews. If any of that sounds interesting to you, please check us out. There's a chat feature on the website, or you can email us at secondratesaints.com. Nope, at secondratesaints@gmail.com. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with us. Loved your comments so far. There's been a lot of really good feedback, and we're building up to another one of our Thoughts in Real Time episodes, so look out for that in the coming weeks.
Do we also want to mention that we reached a milestone?
The big 100, which we missed. It's actually 101 now. We weren't paying attention, and then 2 people subscribed. Huge day for us in the group chat.
Guys, it's up from here.
You know what? We can only go up, or we can go down like we did last time.
Watch 2 people unsubscribe.
If you heard this and unsubscribed, you know what? The Lord will deal with you.
Are you threatening?
I'm not threatening them. I'm not threatening them.
1 Samuel 4-6 might, but...
Yeah, we are going to talk about the judgment of God today, later on in the episode. Unrelated to our subscriber count. But thanks again for making that happen. We've been at it for about a year now, so it's really nice to see some real interaction online. Yeah. For our What Have You Read, we're covering a book we've actually all read. Mm-hmm. So I can't ask anyone specifically.
I am currently holding the copy that's at...
Yeah, so you get to speak.
So I got the book. It's my turn.
It'll make more sense when we have cameras, but yes.
My book.
It's also your book. It's actually a systematic theology, which we've talked a little bit about biblical theology and how that's different than systematics. Not to get all into that. But it's a small 1-volume systematic, extremely approachable. It was one of the textbooks for our systematic class when we were going through Bible school. It goes through the main Big Ten classical systematic doctrines, although it divvies them up into 18 chapters because it wants to go into one specific thing here and there and here and there. It is worth saying that this is a unapologetic evangelical Pentecostal systematic.
Yeah.
Which means, hey, Joel, did you agree with everything that was said in here?
Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. Josh, did you agree?
There's one point specifically, but I don't need to bring it up.
No, but I don't know that I would agree with 100% every systematic theology that I've ever read.
That's a good comment.
Yeah.
And myself, also having grown up in Pentecostal church, I there's stuff in here where I was just I don't know if that's indicative of all Pentecostals. But that being said, some Pentecostal works are not all that great. This one actually isn't that bad.
So Horton, you never mentioned the author, but his name is Stanley Horton.
It's the editor. So it's actually
the editor.
Yeah,
what I was
it's
say,
actually it's actually a bunch of different authors. and I think that that's one of the weaknesses of this book is any systematic that's presented. It's with multiple authors. Each individual like doctrine or even chapter becomes as though they have to reprove something, and so there's a little bit of repetition, but there's also like not like cohesion a little bit between them. It's kind of becomes, oh, these are just separate essays on different systematic doctrines, which is fine. But in comparison to like, what is it? Wayne Grudem's systematic, where he builds very systematically, obviously, or even Erickson. What little bit of Erickson's systematic I've read, it's because it's one author. There's one thing he knows what he's proven before, and he can kind of build on the previous things that he's written and kind of create a cohesive package.
When it's one author, you're more likely to get some logical cohesion between different ideas, right? It's like, it seems like the same guy would believe this and this, whereas in that one you do get some breaks in theme where they might believe the same thing, but they prove it differently. And like you said, they reprove it. So it's like, awkward to read.
But what you mentioned before is like it's the best of the Pentecostal evangelical systematics
that I've come across.
That we've come across. And that's kind of because, as we've discussed, and if anybody familiar with church history, the Pentecostal church has had a history of anti-intellectualism or just anti-academia. Not the whole denomination, but like aspects of it, people groups within it. And so you're gonna find something as robust as you would in like
for the longest time
another denomination.
For the longest time, Pentecostals would just use generic evangelical systematics because they didn't have their own. There's two that I've read parts of. One I've read almost like 3/4 of, and the other I've only read like 1/4. One's the one of them, which I've read most of it, is by Routledge. Handbook to Pentecostal Theology. It's not bad, but it does kind of take this global perspective, which is fine. Other than the fact that there's a little bit of discontinuity in the global perspective of any denomination when you do that, and so it's interesting. It's also like a snapshot of where Pentecostalism is in its like 21st century context. This book, Systematic Theology by Horton, is more, I would say it's reflective of if you had to define what do Pentecostals believe in general, this is a good taste of it. And it's only how many pages? 600 pages, which for a systematic, not bad. Very approachable for a systematic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I believe the course we read it for was a second or third year course. Like it wasn't even that far along.
And it was 2.
Right?
It's actually
split between 2 courses.
Yeah.
Which a 300-page textbook in a second 200, 300 level course is not
it's pretty reasonable. Like, it's not like a crazy amount of information.
I don't know if any layman could pick it up and read it super well. But if you're a layman that's read systematic stuff, like you've read like, short studies in systematics, right? Or whatever, you could easily read this. Josh. I ask you this every time but this is your book. Cover, 1 out of 5.
Ooh.
Not quality of the book, because the quality of the book is
We
abysmal.
didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cover. Okay. This might be one of those moments where you're like, Josh, I don't understand I'm going to give it a 3. The reason why is because title's easy, systematic, editor, blah, 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 whatever. But the picture of a pillar is because like the whole idea of like the doctrines being the pillar of your faith, like the things that you stand, that hold you up as a Christian, is a good image to present. But the color sucks, and it's just like they just threw a pillar on there, so like it's nowhere near great. But so like a 3, it's middle. But it has a good point. It's just could be nicer.
The bookbinding is abysmal. I'd rather they just give it to me in a shopping bag, like just
It's horrible.
just loose paper.
It's horrible.
It's bad.
It's worth saying. I've seen the new editions of this. It's a significantly better printing.
Yeah.
So if you
Does it still have a pillar?
It still has a pillar. It's the exact same book, actually. It's just way better material, like way better.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you buy this book, it's a good kind of, it's a reasonable academic assessment of Pentecostal systematics.
Yeah.
And if you buy it, just make sure you get a new printing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have pages fall out of it. It's just terrible.
But the cover, though.
I know I didn't have a ton to say about the content, but man, it was hard holding that book for so many hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. But we're going to continue on with our Samuel series.
Yep.
So, Josh, take it away.
Okay.
Introduce us. What's happening?
What's happening? So far, a little introduction to the Samuel series for those who are jumping in at this point into the series, but also kind of an overview to get people up to date for this episode, because it's probably been time if you listen to them when they come out. First Samuel chapter 1 to 3 covers Hannah and Elkanah, who have a son named Samuel, who is the prophet that the book is named after. He gets raised by Eli, the high priest of Israel, and the two sons there, Phineas and Hophni. Right?
Phineas and Ferb.
Nope. Close. And there's a contrast between the families of Elkanah and Eli as being righteous and unrighteous, like obedient and unobedient. And then you have a comparison of their sons with Samuel and Phineas and Hophni, and they're shown to be, Samuel's shown to be righteous, and Phineas and Hophni are shown to be not righteous. And then you get to what we're covering today, which is chapter 4 to chapter 7, verse 2. And we're talking about the fall of Eli and his two sons. Mm-hmm. And then chapter 7 to 8, which is next episode we do, is the rise of Samuel as the new priest and prophet and judge, the last judge of Israel. So
the last judge? Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. My brain was thinking prophet. And I'm like, hold on.
No. God's just getting started with prophets.
Yes.
So that's kind of the idea of, we've seen the comparisons in the last 3 chapters, and now we're seeing the outcomes of the comparisons,
right?
Contrasted in the 2 episodes. So Samuel 4 opens up with Israel is at war with the Philistines.
Nothing new.
So if this is at the end of the Judges period, right? There's kind of they're in the next stage of being invaded by their enemies.
Yeah.
And they're losing because they're not obeying God. And the whole Judges period takes place over 400 years. And so they've had a long relationship with the Philistines. Samson didn't happen that long ago. Mm-hmm. It was related to the Philistines. And so they're coming out of conflict they have a relationship with the Philistines, as the Philistines are the people of the coast of Israel. They have 5 cities in, where are the 5 cities? Gath, Gaza. Oh, it's the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
Which Israel also has a unfortunate relationship with right now in history. So so they're not doing well. They're in this war, and eventually they lose a conflict. Mm-hmm. They lose about, 4,000 men, Caleb?
Yes.
The first battle?
The first battle. Yeah, 4,000 men.
Mm-hmm. And if you can correct me there, because you've got it in front of you, the Israelites are how did the Lord let us lose?
Yeah. Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today?
Yeah, just but why? Why would he do this to us? When I read that, it kind of reminded me of us Christians today would be kind of a prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
People are just why is this bad thing happening?
Why is God letting my car break down?
Yeah.
Why is God letting the church not get enough money in the offering? What's going on?
Why don't I have $10,000 in my bank account right now after I bought the water from Peter Popoff off the telemarketer?
Wow, well, huge deep cut. I don't know what that is.
You don't know about the holy water that you can buy from Peter Popoff?
You can buy holy water?
No, but it's different.
What am I doing
it's not
here?
Catholic holy water that fights off vampires.
Which is sanctioned by the Pope, therefore it's real.
Yes. And blessed
Just like
by
vampires.
bishops and stuff like that. This is
Yeah.
just if you buy the water
Yeah.
for an exorbitant price, $24,000 will just appear in your bank account.
Wow.
That-
And only $1,000 will disappear. That's wow.
Do I also get the water?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah. There was actually some
This is like freelance holy water. Though. This isn't official.
students at our school that we went to bought some for the business teacher as a joke, like because he's all about like Christian marketing and stuff like that, and so it was
Terrible.
Yeah, whatever. Let's move on.
We should start a water bottle brand. It's just called Holy Water.
second-rate water.
Second-rate water.
Well,
that doesn't sound good. This is-
Unapologetically out of the tap.
we're going to start off with this is not good. Buy it.
Can we get
Oh man, I had something I was actually going to say, and then we started talking about holy water. Oh well.
So they're losing, and they're wondering why. Why is God letting us die? And specifically, they fall into a trap. They say, "Let's go get the ark," and it's specifically Phineas and Hophni. That not them that carry it, but them that have the idea.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're the ones who go with the ark.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the ones who, let's say, answer the call that go with the ark.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So Victor P. Hamilton, in his handbook on the historical books, he gives hypothetically 3 reasons why they would actually go get the ark. There are at least 3 possibilities why the ark was fetched. 1, the Israelites were defeated because of an oversight. Somebody forgot to send the ark along. That oversight is now corrected. That seems a little unlikely, as it's not presented as a precedent beforehand.
No.
2, by bringing the ark into battle, the Israelites are admonishing Yahweh and reminding him of his covenantal obligations. That doesn't appear to be what's reflected in the text.
No.
And 3, the Israelites believed that the mere presence of the ark would guarantee their survival and victory. If their thinking includes the 3rd point, then the Israelites are guilty of turning what God intended to be a symbol into an idol.
Yeah.
It's the 3rd one though, right?
Yes. Yeah. He goes on to then
Yeah.
go like, there's any reason to think the others is dwarfed by the textual evidence of the 3rd.
Yeah.
And like the 2 reasons I go for that being the 3rd, like the right one, is they're just in a battle. So it doesn't present the story of them like they didn't ask God if they should go to war, which is one of the things they're supposed to do. So like it doesn't say they didn't do that. They're just at war. So it could be defensive, whatever. And it seems to be defensive because they're on their side of the body of water that's being attacked. So, and the Philistines are coming across, so they're probably defensive. But you're supposed to bring the ark out when, like, God sanctions the battle.
Yeah.
When God is the one leading them. So like because it doesn't give us any of that info, we can't really go off. Like, it's not about what they didn't do.
Yeah.
Because that's not what's presented. What's presented is that they say it will save us.
Yeah.
Not he will save us.
Yeah. Well, it shows kind of the transition at the beginning of Samuel that takes God out of the place of kingship and into like the secret weapon kind of a thing. There's enough time has passed that the ark has now got some mystery to it.
Yeah.
And I
400 years between Moses and Samuel. And they're a fractured nation in separate tribes. And so like
And they didn't actually get rid of the Canaanites, so there's intermarriage and there's Canaanite religion popping up.
Yeah.
So no doubt that there's the religious mindset of Israel at that time would be very fractured and not as unified, and perhaps even, if you can use the word, religiously polluted.
Yeah, and one of the cases for that would be if they're bringing what they suppose to be a physical representation of their God into battle. That's not subtly henotheistic. That is overtly henotheistic.
Yeah.
Can we just define henotheism?
Yeah, absolutely. So, people are probably aware of monotheism versus polytheism. Monotheism is that there's only one God that exists, and you either worship him or you don't. Polytheism is there are many gods, and you can worship whatever of them, however many there are. Think of like the Greek pantheon, Zeus, Hades, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole pantheon of gods. There's many of them. Henotheism is very similar to polytheism, probably a subset of it, where there are many gods, but each nation has a god that is associated with them, or each city-state has a god that's associated with them. So like the idea, and when those cities or countries go to war, their gods fight on their behalf.
Yeah.
And when one nation loses, it's because that god lost.
Well, and you even see elements of where polytheism blurs into henotheism when you see the fractured, like very young early Greece, the fractured cities, they would fight each other. And so you'd have like Athens, obviously, had a close affinity to Athena. And when Athens, the city, goes to war against others, it would be articulated in some like participating in some divine war that's also going across there. So you see elements of that even in Greece, but henotheism is far more explicitly articulated by the people, where it's like we serve this god, and when we go to war, our god fights on our side, their god fights on their side, and sometimes it's even articulated as landlocked, right?
Yeah.
And so when they go and take over something, their god has taken over the land of the other gods.
Yeah.
And the specifically why Babylon is so important in the ancient Near East in culture and stories, whatever, is because the city of Babylon was the chief city of the major god Marduk. And so he was considered the most powerful of the gods by all of the religions in that area. So if you had that city, it meant Marduk was on your side. And you wanted to make sure Marduk was on your side. And so that's why so many historical conflicts surround Babylon as a nation, is because it's specifically tied to that idea of henotheism being city-locked gods. And so Israel, their God is the God of Jerusalem. God says, I will dwell in Jerusalem. This is my city. This is my people, right? And I've cordoned off this land.
This would be before they have Jerusalem, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
However, it is the God of the Israelites.
Yeah.
Well, Jerusalem was taken from the Kenites by Saul, wasn't it?
Isn't it
Or by
David?
Solomon, sorry.
David takes him.
David,
yeah,
yeah.
he climbs up a well.
Yeah.
Then he makes a rule
Oh,
that
you're right,
that
yeah.
handicapped people can't go in the city. It's a weird little there
Yeah,
you go.
that is odd.
Yes. No, that's a good correction there. But it's like God dwells within the camp in the wilderness. And so he goes with his people where they go. And he's leading them to this promised land, and he gives it to them. Right. And then eventually when they build the temple and blah, 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 this is my city.
Yeah.
This is where I place my name. But God breaks that pattern. And the Israelites here are falling into that idea. God is locked inside this object that represents him as an idol. And if we bring him out, he will win for us.
Yeah.
And like for those of you in a more Protestant, less kind of traditional, maybe this has nothing to do with denominations, but think of like, well, why did they think that about just a box?
Yeah.
Okay, it took God 6 days to create the earth, and he spent 40 days creating the ark. So it's like, it's pretty important, right? Like, it's exactly how he told Moses to build it. Like, there's some very significant
dying
stuff.
at the analogy, but fair enough.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very important.
Well,
to
it's
them.
also like, that's where the sacrifice of atonement is placed.
Yeah.
Like
The blood is sprinkled
the
upon.
blood is sprinkled upon. That's where God focuses the pillar of fire in the temple.
It's
pillar of cloud.
It's articulated as the link between heaven and earth. As actually Joel mentioned earlier, it's the footstool of his throne. It's the connection point. It's also the housing of the Ten Commandments and the covenant.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the
bread of life.
most sacred thing that they have.
Yeah. It's the only object, and in it, like on it, what I think is cool is anti-henotheistic and anti-idol is there's a space in it where two angels are bowing, but there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And the point is that you can't represent God in with a object. And so even in the box, even as an object itself, it's saying, don't try to make something that defines me.
And the imagery that God uses in instructing this is so deep. Like there's so many layers to it. Even like you said, it being a footstool, that just replicates the way they would make treaties with Canaanite kings. Except the difference was this is a treaty with God. It had never been seen before that you could make, because what would happen is you would have law code that you lay at the feet of your ruler, and then that ties him into your law that you're presenting to him, essentially, like a pact. And the idea that you could make a law with God is unheard of for the people of that time. So it's just cool.
Yeah, so they bring that out.
I'm going to get too deep into the ark, but that's just because
No.
We could do a whole episode on the ark. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think you could talk about this story without getting into why is the ark important, because God really makes it important.
Yeah. Well, I think even the average Christian is aware, like, oh, the ark is important, but I don't think, like, even after Bible school, I read about it and it's just, oh, there's so much stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the last time we ever see it.
We see it. It's brought into the temple.
It's brought into the temple. David, is it David that has
David?
Who gets shot when holding onto the horns? It's Solomon that tells.
Yeah.
Is he holding onto the horns of the altar though? Actually,
It might.
It says he threw himself before the mercy seat, I think is what it is.
then it would be the ark.
Yeah.
I feel dumb now.
But David goes into so David brings it into the city, and there's the whole dancing thing there. It's when he's at the party after this event, the ark sits at a guy's house for a while.
I think the last it's ever talked about is Hezekiah, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's missing from the list of things taken to Babylon during the exile.
Yeah.
So somewhere in that time it disappeared or was something happened.
The general consensus that I've heard, not consensus because there's not much of a consensus on this. The general theory is that the Israelites would have hidden it when the city was being besieged.
There's a bunch of fun theories about the Ark of the Covenant.
Unless it was destroyed by them as by the Babylonians in such a way that it would be like, this is your God's destroyed because we took your nation because henotheism. Anyway,
But I still don't think. Well, obviously it didn't defeat their God, but like, I don't even think that symbolically would have defeated.
It also might have just been
a
if that is the case, then it's a transition point in Israel's like theology and relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because and then even in Christianity, we have articulations of like, if the Ark of the Covenant is the place where God rests, right, and is where the sacrifice of atonement is placed, right, there's a relationship between the Ark of the Covenant and Jesus, that's the mercy seat, stuff where sin is placed and God looks down on it, and Israel's considered atoned. Also, if it's the thing that houses God in that sense, then there's also the relationship between the Christian being the temple, the place that
it's the dwelling place theology stuff.
And so like you've got now it's transferred to every human rather than a box.
Where do you think the ark is? Like, does your conspiracy side kind of like
Ethiopia?
The fun one is Ethiopia.
Okay, so that one became popular recently, and now the people who were like working at that temple are confused. Like, there's actually been problems with tourism in Ethiopia.
I just find it
because
funny.
of conspiracy theory.
One. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
Well, I recently watched Indiana Jones, not the first one, but I did watch the third one, and it's held in a warehouse in Nevada.
Area
That makes
51.
sense. Yeah, and it's magnetic, I think.
But back to the Bible. So
No, I was thinking of the crystal skull. Sorry.
true.
Man, I'm sorry for this episode, guys.
This is
having
fun.
tons of fun.
Yeah, this is fun. So the Philistines defeat Israel.
They kill 30,000 apparently.
Why do you say that sarcastically, Caleb?
Because in any ancient document, anytime, even in the Bible, they play stuff up and they round it up to say, hey, so many people died.
Yeah.
Kind of like how even in Revelation, they'll be like, there will be blood up to the, whatever.
Yeah.
And lots of it.
Yeah.
Or it'll be like some astronomical number. And the reason why 30,000 is crazy is because like 57,000 British guys died in the Battle of the Somme. And that's with population more than quadrupled of what they had then. You see countries in the medieval age that lose that many men, they cease to exist.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's communicating the point. Crazy amounts of them died, enough so that it would have made like an impact in their like economic, and like they wouldn't recover from that much loss of life in generations.
Yeah.
Like crazy amount of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Israelite priests, and sadly what happens is when they bring it out, they lose, which in their mind is not supposed to happen. Why? They've already asked, why would God let us die? And now why would he let his most precious artifact be taken?
Yeah. Arguably, perhaps some of them would consider it he is taken.
Yeah. He's been defeated. The God that took us out of Egypt has been defeated. And the priests die.
Yeah.
So
Sons of Eli.
the sons of Eli die, and the news gets a man running with sackcloth and ash on his head runs to Eli, and tells him that the ark has been taken and his sons are dead.
Well, doesn't he tell? Yeah, but he tells him that his sons are dead, and that doesn't cause him to fall over. It's the fact that the ark was taken, and the text specifically says that he was worried, that Eli was worried about the ark.
Yeah.
He's told that his sons die, and he's like, okay, but then he's told that the ark has been captured. That's when he falls over because the text says he's fat and blind and old,
He's old and heavy.
and then he breaks his neck.
Yeah.
And that is the end of Eli, the fulfillment of the prophecy that was given to Samuel.
And the mystery man of God.
Yes.
Yeah. The dual prophecy.
Yeah.
That his family would die at their good age, at the prime of their life. And the point that points out that they're at the prime of their life is one of his son's wives is pregnant and has a kid as he dies. So he's within that young. He's at the prime of his life.
Yeah, early 20s to early 30s.
And the child's name
ideally.
is what the glory of God has left us is how it translated, which shows.
Joel, take us on the
No,
the ride.
we did this last episode. There's a whole pun involved in it. It's whatever. You can watch our last episode. I'll explain it.
No,
again.
bring it up because it's actually important to the end of the
Ichabod.
into the end of the story.
Is his name Ichabod? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
The glory of God has left us. I think that there's something to be said about his only remaining offspring. His line continues with his failure, kind of a thing. I don't know. There's something there.
Yeah.
But a big deal there is glory and honor and heavy are all the same word, or can be the same word. Kabod or however you want to say.
Yeah.
Or kevet. That's what it is.
Depending if you have a American Hebrew prof or British Hebrew prof or maybe a Canadian Hebrew prof.
Yeah. It's all over the place. But either way, it's to honor, to glorify, all these different things, or heavy. Like there's a weight to it, right? So when it says the glory of God has left us, it says also the heavy has left us. And I think that's funny because his grandfather was old and fat and broke his neck.
And it ties into, we'll get to it, but the setup is that it's in the previous episode, the two sons, the rebellious priests, they were taking God's glory. Right. And that's the thing. That's the charge that's brought against them.
Yeah.
And
His whole family.
yeah, his whole family was taking and getting fat off of.
Which is
Like
the
taking-
connection point between heavy and glory is they were taking God's glory and getting fat. It's a weird image.
There's a weird whole play on like words that there's some weird play on words in the Old Testament it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But and so they've been taking God's glory, so God's glory just leaves now.
Yeah. And because his glory leaves, the glory in Eli's family also leaves the earth.
Yeah.
meaning they die.
meaning they die.
Yeah, that's a dead stop for Eli's family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. But what happens is the Philistines make this interesting remark, and this is an interesting note to keep over the next 3 chapters, is the people, the army of the Philistines say Israel has brought out their gods.
Yeah.
That-
And they really worry about it.
Yeah.
And then is it all in one thing? Yeah. I think it's all in one thing. And then there's just like, don't be afraid. We'll be okay. Fight like men.
yeah. It's funny, but it's like it's also what that is in the Deuteronomy, in the code with that covenant with God, which is the ark is highly related to the ark of the covenant, right? If Israel failed the covenant, the armies would overtake them and they would scatter away. But if Israel was obedient, the enemies would run away in terror. And so it shows that
They almost do. They almost run away in terror. Like they do mention the I hate this. I have a reader's Bible in front of me, which means I have chapter numbers but not verse numbers. So forgive me for not giving verse numbers. But there's the like, we're doomed. Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? Speaking of the ark, because they don't know. They are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness, and it's their. You see in Exodus, there's this idea of kind of God being like stepping onto the world stage in a very public manner with the, making his name great by lifting up Pharaoh for this purpose, right? And this is, as Josh mentioned, this is 400 years later. They know this stuff, and they're like, holy moly.
Yeah.
And so what Josh was getting at there with the code, you see, if they were acting rightly, the natural extent to that would be, this is the God that took them out of Egypt, run away.
Yeah.
But then the immediate line is, no, fight like men.
Yeah.
We're fine. And so it almost still works, but it's I think that's there to reveal that it's there's the covenant that's supposed to function in that way, but if you're not faithful, God's not going to make it happen.
Yeah. And what's interesting is he still does.
Yes, in a very different way.
He still makes sure it gets done. You don't. And so, but what's interesting is also in the other stories when Israel leaves Egypt, they know him as the Lord. Jericho, they've heard of the Lord doing these things to Egypt. The Moabites heard of the Lord doing these things to Egypt, like all these guys. But because Israel hasn't been obedient, the people don't know. The enemies now just refer to him as many gods. Right. They don't understand who the Lord is as he should have been known to the world.
Right. And they're not being the kingdom of priests that they were called into that covenantal relationship.
Yeah. Instead, they're praising themselves, honoring themselves,
becoming like the nations around them.
Yeah. Then that leads us into the next section, chapter 5.
The ark side quest.
I love this. I love that there's like nobody that sees this happen, and they're like, "Oh," and then the box went on a journey. It's so cool.
Yeah. So
it's like it got a dash cam on it or something.
Do you want to read like the first few verses of chapter 5?
Yes. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they had carried the ark into Dagon's temple, and there was Dagon. That's all right. I skipped a thing. And set it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. They took Dagon and put him up in his place. But the following morning, when they rose, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. His head and his hands had broken off, and they were lying upon the threshold. Only his body remained. Mm-hmm. Then it makes a note how, like, hey, that's why people don't stand on the threshold in Ashdod anymore.
Yeah.
But there's some significant cultural stuff going on here beyond just, hey, your idol just falls over in front of the ark.
What's also interesting is this is one of the only moments in the Bible where you have a God v. God showdown.
No comment.
I just mean
because I think there's there.
the only like there's. I don't mean that there's an actual like Dagon fighting, but I mean like it's only the Lord's Ark and Dagon's statue in this room.
It's not the people of God fighting against
Yeah.
this evil nation.
Yeah.
It is just two physical representations of what people understand as either the mercy seat of God, the place where the footstool of his throne, versus an actual idol.
Yeah. Before we get into like the actual stuff, what's interesting is this is because of the text, like the Israelites don't know this is happening until later through story or whatever. But this is an actual, like in a weird way, a carry out of that henotheistic, the gods are fighting.
They bring the ark into an area.
Yeah.
And
But-
they fight, quote unquote.
Yeah, but God is showing that he's not just the God of Israel's land, which is the henotheistic, like one of the major ideas in henotheism, that you're the God because you're the God in this land. You have power only here. But he's showing the reader, right, that henotheistic idea doesn't make sense, but he's doing so in a henotheistic fight. So,
And I think it's important to everyone kind of intuitively knows that, this is God as our understanding as this being outside of time and all this kind of stuff that, like, the God of the philosophers and, the God of the reformers and whatnot. Like, this is like whatever, but it's God communicating and interacting with those people the way they understand in that culture. And it's important to just know that. And I think we intuitively get that.
Yeah.
But there's a couple cultural things that make that falling over, and then the falling over and the hands and the head falling off.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Very important.
the number one thing is, if you are up to date with your 10 commandments, if you memorize
They haven't
those,
changed recently.
There's a new update.
It's
It's 11 now.
the very first commandment that opens up the law is, you shall have no other gods before me or beside me. Right. And what's interesting is he uses both of those words in the Lord is placed before Dagon in his temple. And then also Dagon falls, he falls before the Lord, and then before he's placed beside Dagon.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's a direct relationship to that first commandment. And God is saying, no, he's acting, he's making sure that his commandment is fulfilled, even though there's no one in the room.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Second of all, when an enemy nation in henotheism defeats an enemy nation, they take their gods and put them in there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
God's
that's why he's in there to begin with. That's why the ark is in Dagon's temple, is not because they were going to worship the ark. It's because having another god's implements in your temple was an act of supremacy. You'll see that later on in the story of Daniel when they use the temple furnishings in the temple of their own gods. It's, again, an act of supremacy.
Yep.
So.
And so you've got that. You've also got what's interesting is it opens up with them referring to him as God, singular. And then in that same chapter, they then say the Lord. What's really interesting about that is the people of the Philistines said gods before that. And this is the priest or the priests or the rulers talking now. So
They haven't spoken yet.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not until 6.
Okay. So that point comes up later. We'll talk about that then. But you've also got the hands coming off. What's interesting about this is culturally in the Ugaritic text, which is very close to that area and those cultures, there's a god that cuts off the heads and the hands of their opponents. It's the goddess Anit, the god of war.
Does she show up in one of the minor prophets?
Maybe.
I feel like I've read that, but I don't know.
Joel, do a quick Google search. You're our Jamie.
Hey, Joel, pull that up. Yeah. Nice guess.
So like there's a thing. She by defeating her opponents, she carries the hands and the head of her opponents out of the battlefield. Epic. But also interesting. Similar area, but then in history and time and relationship. But you've also got the Hittites, which are again highly related to the Philistines in that area, very close. The religions are similar in Canaan, Hittite, and like Babylonian. They worship the same gods, but with slightly different names.
Yeah, and like there'd be some cultural practices that are different,
Mm-hmm.
but all like there's many transferable themes. Some
Yeah.
stories just get changed.
Yeah. And one of them is there was one prayer that they would use where they would talk about making sure that the god had a statue with heads and hands. And they would make sure that that was the case because their statues, the gods were depicted wearing robes. And so only the hands, the feet, and the head were shown. And because of that, a lot of their statues, they weren't like Michelangelo's, like David, right? They weren't just one piece of sculpted marble. The Hittites and the Canaanites often had statues that had like removable hands and heads
With like pegs and whatnot.
with like pegs, like push fit.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that the text says that they broke off,
Yeah.
meaning they couldn't be put back on.
Yes.
Not easily.
Yeah. They were cleaved. So from our quick study, Joel, what did we figure out about Anet or
The
NF?
Anet is mentioned in Judges, which would date her to about 1400 BC. Closely related to Baal or Baal.
Yeah.
So like the prophets of Baal from later on in Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be seeing some of her.
Anet is the consort of Baal.
Yeah.
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 Wild. So deeply related to this specific area.
If anything, it is symbolism that they are acquainted with.
Yep. And so again, it's Dagon, it's not Anet, but it's not Baal, it's not that area, but it's again, all these, as we're about to discuss, the religions around each other know each other, right? They just like we as Christians know about Islam
Yeah.
or, Hinduism or Mormonism. Yeah. And which, yeah.
It's kind of speaking in a different order, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so there's a relationship there, which is really interesting. And so he does this. How many times does Dagon fall?
Twice.
Twice.
But then the people of Ashdod, it says that they're inflicted. Ashdod and its vicinity actually it points out that it's not just Ashdod, but it's the surrounding region of Ashdod. They're inflicted with tumors.
Yep.
And then they, excuse me, when the people of Ashdod saw that what was happening, they said the ark of God. So this time they say God, but
Yeah.
they haven't said Lord yet. And of the God of Israel must not stay here with us because his hand is heavy on us and on Dagon our God. So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?
Yeah.
So there's been a little bit of a development, not full blown.
Nope. But it's people of like higher status. It seems as if the normal people of Israel, of the Philistines, like don't have a great understanding of the Israelite religion, whereas like the rulers kind of have a better understanding. The same way that like we don't have a great understanding of another nation's politics, like India or whatever, but our government does because they deal with India all the time.
Yeah.
So like so that's why you get like the Philistine people think it's gods, plural, but
Once it starts moving up in the education, then they start. You get closer and closer to more accurate vocabulary. Then they decide to move it to Gath.
yes.
So it goes from Ashdod to Gath. So now it's reached 2 of the cities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gath, interestingly, is going to come up later. That is the hometown of Goliath.
Yeah.
Yes, it is true.
It's almost like the radioactivity made them all giants, hey? Anyways.
Nope.
That was the Nephilim. Anyway,
Oh, yeah. So my
Tumors
reference there-
continue.
Yeah, the tumors continue. Anyways, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy side of it, but there's so many conspiracies with the Ark. It's so interesting. And one of them is that it's radioactive, but, whatever.
Caleb.
I just think it's cool.
I know.
Like you gotta let me into the conversation a little bit.
We will have to do an episode on biblical conspiracy theories.
Oh
at
my
some
goodness,
point.
can I be gone?
No, we need you to keep us grounded.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway,
We need
so it
your
goes to
reactions.
gas. Tumors continue, and they're like, ah.
Send it to the next city.
Yes. Then it goes to Ekron. Ekron also, they say they have brought the ark of the God of Israel around us to kill us and our people. And they called together the rulers of the Philistines and said, send the ark of the God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place, or it will kill us and our people. For death had filled the city with panic.
Yeah.
God's hand had come down very hard on it. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up into heaven, which is interesting. Normally, when the Bible talks about crying or like the pleas or something going up into heaven, it's normally followed by God's either mercy or his salvation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, that happens.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's as we're about to get into. So in chapter 6.
Yeah.
When the ark of the Lord had been in the Philistine area for about 7 months, then the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord?"
Yeah.
Now again, development.
Yeah.
Tell us how we should send it back to its place.
Yeah. And what's interesting is we just talked about how the Israelite priests misused the ark. And now the Philistines are going to their priests, pagan priests, and they're saying, how should we deal with this object? As if they know.
There's also something cool in Ekron. Ekron was famous in the ancient world for its exporting of olive oil, which was weird because they found it on tablets and receipts and all these kind of things in the courts.
Clay receipts, not
clay
paper
receipts. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, here's a print off. No, it was like
All the ink goes away in heat.
yeah. Which I mean, anyways, it's not important. So they found these documents, right? And people were wondering, like, for a long time, how in the world did they do this? They don't have any olive trees in Ekron, and there's a good chance that they would have been taking over some of the Israelite land and developing already the crops that Israel will be famous for later, like literally the Mount of Olives, right? So there's a good chance that in God putting the ark in Ekron, what he was doing was destabilizing that town and then giving back the land that had been used as a vassal state of Ekron, which would have been connected to the Philistines earlier than that, to Egypt, and just completely messing up the politics of it.
Yeah.
And all of this taking place between the Bronze Age turning into the Iron Age is like a technological advancement. It's so cool. What a cool part of history.
Here's the other thing. Have you seen the overlay of where God goes on a map? Like in
I have
the transfer?
I have seen it. Although I've seen this, and I remember someone making a big deal out of it, and I don't remember what the deal was.
So what's interesting is Babylon, the Philistines are known for being ruled by city states, 5 cities that are known, and he not only does he go through 3 cities and just decimate the population, freeing Israel from this conflict.
Oh, he wins the war.
He wins the war, but also he, like, the path in which he travels is like trade routes, military locations, like stuff that the Philistines are just trying to get him out, but they don't realize what they're doing is they're decimating their own nation.
There could be that. I think it's also more likely that this is a prize. This is a military prize. They would keep it in places that are secure.
Yeah.
But by keeping them in places that are secure, they are destabilizing their military and economic stability.
Yeah.
So like what's interesting is it does like a circle through Philistine land and then back into Israel as we get into.
So God does a raid.
Yeah. God wins. Like, he goes right down, like, as Joel has on this map here, the Philistine nation is like this slim, like, coastal nation, and he just goes right down the middle of it, down the whole length, and then out. And so he just decimates the enemy that they are all afraid of. And they just lost the ark too.
Yeah.
And like, what that's showing you is the anti-henotheistic idea that God is trying to present. I'm not located in a land. I'm not located in an object. I'm winning because I'm the Lord.
Yeah, I'm not. My power and authority is not region based
Yeah.
Also,
or
this
people based.
arc narrative seems to be not shoehorned in exactly, but added in a different style than the rest of Samuel. So Samuel, in a wider breadth, is pro kingship.
Yeah.
It is fine with Israel having a king, but it seems that this could be a text from a different document that was anti-monarchy, right? So that could be that the history of the Israelites is being put together in this one book, Samuel.
Yeah.
So
You don't want a king, you want me.
if seen in that light, it's, hey, I can save myself. You can't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it's very much like, hey, this is going to be paired later on with the, hey, don't get a king because he'll tax you.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I did this for free. I took out your enemies. Right?
Yeah.
And
Why do you want to pay for what I could do for free?
This,
Yeah.
this is why God doesn't like the IRS.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Here, kids. Don't pay your taxes.
Tax fraud. Do tax fraud.
The official position of second-rate saints.
No, it's okay. But what's interesting about this is, so he goes through the cities, but then they go to the priests and they refer to him as the Lord. But did we want to, like, what the diseases and the rats, the tumors and the rats?
Well, it's they when they asked them, what do we do? The priest respond. They answered, for if you return the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it back to him without a gift. By all means, send a guilt offering with him. Then you will be healed, and you will know why this hand has. Then you will know why his hand has not been lifted from you. The Philistines ask, what guilt offering do we send? And then they do a guilt offering, but they also, they say, hey, send this gift. 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, according to the number of Philistine rulers, because the same plague has struck both you and your rulers.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting is the Philistine priests know him as the Lord. Like they know his covenant name with Israel, and they know the Israelite guilt offering. Like they know why they like.
Well, to be okay, in certain, this comes more from my knowledge of Roman times. So I don't know if it's applicable because we're talking 1,000 years difference.
Yeah.
Millennia difference. However, Rome, before they would take over a land, they would beseech and make sacrifices to those gods to join Rome's pantheon, to betray their own people and join the glory of Rome. Join this.
Hey,
this-
we're better than you.
Yeah.
Your people. We can be your people.
Yeah, we could be your people. Join our pantheon, the collection of gods, this organization of religious and political power that is just this dominating everything, right? It wouldn't shock me if Israel's surrounded by henotheistic and mostly actually polytheistic type nations that verge into henotheism tendencies, that bordering nations would know the practices of other gods so that they could try to, in times of war, win over their favor. Because that does happen. I know it happened in like the 3rd century BC.
Well, there's another case of it in Israel's history. When Sennacherib, the king of Assyria's general, comes and attacks Israel the first time, he sends a letter to the king of Israel and to the people, and like they announce it from the walls, and they say, "Your God was the one that told me to attack you. Your God has already given."
That's right.
To
That's
me.
right. That's right.
So why fight? Right, and so like they're using a similar strategy of just like your God's on my side.
Yeah. And so I don't think it's there is reasons why border nations might actually study how do you talk to this God?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now what's interesting is there's 2 things that I want to bring up is the rats and the tumors, the 5 statues that they give of each is in that whole area, the Canaanite religion stuff. There was a thing called sympathetic magic, which was you would make an object that is similar to the thing that's cursing you. And the idea was that the curse would be placed on it, and you would leave the city, and you would go away, and it would take the curse with it. And you see something similar to that with the bronze snake.
Yeah. And maybe Yom Kippur?
Yep.
Azazel?
Yes, the atonement, the sacrifice would be taken onto the sheep,
Azazel, sorry.
taken
I
away,
pronounced it wrong.
out of the city. And so, but theirs was that we can manipulate it ourselves, right? Like we can make this thing. It's not tied to necessarily religion, but it's like we can undo this curse if we apply it to this object that we craft. Whereas in those cases, it's God going to Israel and saying like, hey, this is how we're going to fix this sin issue.
I'm going to give you
a way out.
A way out that I've sanctioned and that I'm going to work through.
Yeah.
It is not you, it's my power.
Yeah. But what's interesting is they say, the Philistine priest says, we must honor the Lord. Mm-hmm. That brings us back to the Israelite priests.
Yeah.
Because they were not giving honor to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. In fact, they were actively taking it.
Yeah. And so and there's another thing, the Philistines also say, don't you remember with Pharaoh and Egypt when when he stopped attacking and God put all the plagues on them, that when the Egyptians stopped, they walked out?
Well, yeah, they make a comment. Hey, it all stops when they just let it go.
Yeah.
So let it go. Just let it go. Give him gifts. Send him out. Just like the Egyptians gave them the gold and sent them out.
Yeah.
Get out of here. And so there's that cool relationship there, but also that they give honor to the Lord. The priests of God's enemies give him honor, but his own priests won't.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's like the bookends of like this story from chapter 4 to chapter 6.
Yeah.
Is the enemy priests give him glory and he enters back into Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they stole his glory and God left. His enemies give it to him and he enters back.
See, I know there's no ties to like New Testament Gentile stuff going on here,
Mm-hmm.
but my brain can't help go. There's pattern, but I don't see it.
Well,
so
I mean, Ruth was just a couple of years before this.
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty close.
like that one's clear.
Yeah.
So Elkanah and Naomi's family won't give God his due. They don't trust him enough, and they leave and die. And God's someone with honor that gives God honor is coming into Israel, Ruth, and that's how the king is born.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I think the theme of I'm going to do it myself is just unmistakable.
Oh yeah, it's the primary thing. It's the you can't defend yourself. Don't try to.
I can defend myself without you.
Yeah,
and there's also this whole thing of like, you will be my people and I will be your God.
Yeah.
Right. And that promise doesn't hold up when they're not his people.
Yeah,
he will punish them for misusing.
But he is still God.
He will punish the whole nation.
And that's what's crazy. So like there's this thing where it's the law of Moses is underneath the law of it. Like the covenant of Moses is underneath the covenant of Abraham. And so like the covenant of Moses is that if you obey, this will happen. Right? Yeah. There's a give and take. And Israel doesn't do that. And so they're punished, like the law of Moses states, that if you do not obey, if you do not honor me, if you do not do all these things, then the blessing will be taken away. Right? But he's still operating within his covenant with Abraham, which is, I'm going to do it regardless of if you do it. Right? So like, yes, Israel's defeated. The glory of the Lord leaves Israel and they get their due as according to the covenant with Moses. But he's still as we've discussed in the Abraham episode, he's like, but it's on me. And even though you're sinful and you're going to do terrible things, I'm still going to make sure that you are there.
Yeah, the system. I'm going to carry the system.
I'm going to carry the system. Yeah.
So the like, get it out of here. That's how we get rid of. That's how we get rid of all these plagues. That's how Egypt did it. That's how we're going to do it. So now then, Get a cart ready. This is the priest telling them again what to do. Now then, get a new cart ready with 2 cows that have been calved and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take care that the calves take their calves away and pen them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the cart, and in a chest beside it, place the golden objects that you are sending back with him as a guilt offering. Send it on its way, but keep watching it. If it goes up to its own territory, towards Bethel Shemesh, then the Lord has brought this great disaster upon us. If it does not, then we know that it was not his hand that struck us, but it happened to us by chance. Mm-hmm. And so the whole goats thing, the whole cows thing is, if you try to separate a mother cow from her calf, it's this horrible system. Also, getting 2 cows to operate in unison, being yoked, never having been yoked, both of those things, one of them is enough to go, okay, this is not going to be a good system. It's both of them together, this is an impossible system. You're not going to get them to go in one direction for 2 feet.
And yet it walks straight to Israel.
Yeah. Yeah, now when the people were harvesting, sorry, I'm going to find the place. They looked up and saw the ark. Yeah, it just...
I love that. I love the idea of them just like farming. Just like some family, and they just look over on the horizon, or some dude looks up and he just sees, like, you know, like in like Western movies where like you see like the heat go across the desert and you see like the lone horseman coming over. Yeah. And it's just like, I imagine like a Western song playing, like Victory. And God's like, I did it.
I'm back. Yeah, no, then the cows went straight up towards Beth Shemesh, keeping on the road and lowing all the way. They did not turn to the left or to the right. The rulers of the Philistines followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. So it's just beelines
straight.
So cool.
Yeah.
Imagine how horrifying that would be for them. Mm-hmm. It was just like, oh, it's leaving. Oh, good. Oh.
Yeah, and it goes away. There's
anyone taste metal? No, I'm kidding.
Again.
What's interesting about that is, so God comes back, and the glory that they send with the Lord enters back into Israel. Mm-hmm. So it's the glory of God has returned. Mm-hmm. And because of that, that's what opens up the next chapter, which is, and then Samuel's like rise to being the prophet.
Yeah.
And the kingmaker.
What's interesting is that the Israelites don't really seem to learn much from this.
It stays there for what, 20 years?
It stays there for 20 years, but also like, yeah, they take the wood from the cart and they make an offering there. They kill the 2 cows and whatnot. But then also like, I forget, does it name the guy who touches the ark, and he's just, God kills him.
Oh yeah, that's when David.
Oh, that's when David
is on the scene.
Sorry. Then there's which one is it? There's some 40 odd people die. And the gold terminus. But God struck down some of the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, 70 of them. Man, I get my
it's okay.
ark killing people stories confused. 70 of them to death because they looked into the ark of the Lord. Then the people mourned because of the heavy blow that God had dealt with them. And the people of Beth Shemesh asked, who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom will the ark go up from here?
Yeah. What's interesting, right, is the Philistines were able to move it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even though in the law, it's required that you do cleansing rituals. It's only a certain tribe of Israel that can do it within the Levite tribe. Mm-hmm. And they have to do this whole thing, and you have to carry it by human hands, but on the poles that go through the side. And the whole Philistine ark, the Philistines, it doesn't specify how they carry it. They're not of that tribe. They didn't do any rituals, right, to make sure. But what's interesting is the guilt offering that it mentions is that those were specifically used as an apology for sacrilege.
Isn't the guilt offering the objects in of themselves?
Yes. But what I mean is that a guilt offering is given, like the purpose of a guilt offering versus just a sin
Right.
The thing was, I've committed sacrilege.
Yeah.
I've done something wrong to this god. And that's interesting that the priests omit that. He's defeated our god
In his house.
in his temple, and we're doing something wrong. We're not treating him right, and they still don't. But by putting him on the cart,
let him go.
but like, let's do our best to obey in what our limited understanding is of this God, right? Let's do our best. Let's honor him the best we can, and let's send him off to do what he wants. And the moment Israel gets him back, they're like, let's check what's inside his box.
Yeah. Boom. Dead.
Yeah, and because they don't obey what they know to be true about the law, right? Following the specific Levites, the carrying it the proper way, the water rituals, stuff like that, the cleansing rituals, they're treated harsher. Just immediately 40 people
You're
die.
judged for what they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, it shows that they didn't learn. But like, again, they thought the ark was just gone.
Yeah.
Also, Beth Shemesh isn't necessarily near. It's been like 7 months.
Yeah.
And since that battle, and it's not even near where the battle happened.
Yeah. No, it's traveled.
Yeah. So these people, like, how much do they know of like the whole
Probably
situation?
not a lot.
Well, I mean, the idea would be if an astronomical amount of people died,
Yeah.
and they're expecting the Philistines, after they won this giant battle, to just pour over the border and become their captives and their vassals, and it just doesn't happen because everybody's at home dying.
And then the ark mysteriously appears on a cart
Yeah.
over the land. That's a wild. Like you
like
said
it.
before, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
It's also very much like, even in our sin, like, to make it Christian New Testament, even in our sin, God is still fixing the problem. Like, kind of like sanctification.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
you even see this kind of when, like, you look at Christian history through like missionaries, right? There'll be times when, especially like with colonial past, right? There'll be colonizers will come over and they'll abuse or use local people groups, whether
Objectively horrifying.
horrifying. And then God will use just one person. And it'd be like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah. I'm going to make sure this happens because I've said it would.
Yes.
And this whole plan is for the redemption of humanity, but
Or you even see it sometimes in your local church when the people that should be preaching the word and whatnot aren't, and then you have either the Spirit working through several laymen where it's like, fine, I'll teach.
well, and you even see that with the exile of the kings and the priests get wiped out
Yeah.
when Babylon and Assyria take over, and it's just some faithful laymen that survive and repopulate and come back. And yeah, there was an interesting, so Paul Vanderklay, a CRC pastor, said this once. It's in cataclysms, what we think of as the best die off. And so like and that's how Christianity survives. Whereas like other like whole nations will collapse, or whole like Western civilization, like a civilization will fall apart, but like Christianity will still exist over time. And it's because the best of us die. And I'm putting air quotes because it's who we think is the best. Our best theologians, or our kings, or our priests, our philosophers. We always go to them for like, what's the best of Christianity? But they're the ones that end up getting.
They're important.
They're important.
They're important, and they have a job to do, and they need to be. They're good at that job. I think it's. I forget,
but it's the layman that survives.
I can never remember who it is that said this, and I might be merging a couple quotes. I'm not confident enough to quote it. I'll paraphrase it. Something to the effect of like, yeah, you have the named theologians, you have these people all throughout church history and tradition and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the bastion of the Christian faith in the local church is just the praying mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just that's the one who you can almost guarantee on. I was in Gulag Archipelago. There's actually, he makes a comment about how priests would often just like give up on certain things, but holy moly, some angry Orthodox elderly woman just would preach at her interrogators nonstop.
What's interesting that you said it's the praying mother. Oh, you mean like Samuel's mother, Hannah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one who's faithful, but the priests she's praying with. You drunk? Get out of here.
Or how about the wife of the two priests, the mother of Ichabod?
Yeah.
She's obviously mourning that God's glory has left.
Yeah.
She names her son that.
Yeah. Not like it focuses on her sadness about God leaving, not her husband dying.
Yeah.
Which is
Although
Well,
it's a
her
play on
husband
words.
wasn't the top-notch guy to begin with.
no, he wasn't.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Is that even though the priests, the ones that should have been the obedient, the faithful, and stuff like that, it was two mothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've snaked around a bit on this one. I liked it. It was a fun time, but
We
went on a little side quest in our
the
Samuel
arc.
journey.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is my favorite type of episode where we just get to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
You know? So this is officially making the Second Rate Saints the Ark of the Covenant hotline if you know any whereabouts or... No, I'm only
Report
joking.
the missing ark.
This is where we're starting our second series where Joel and I will be traveling to Ethiopia to check out if the ark's real.
We're calling this conspiracy theology, and
Do you think the
I
70
made it up
people,
right now.
Do you think the 70 people, their melted faces, their face melted like it is in
Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's a shot-for-shot remake.
Oh, you're saying
Because they opened it just like those people.
I'm just saying.
But also or are the spirits in the Ark of the Covenant in Indiana Jones, those 70 people?
Joel?
Guaranteed.
Joel, end it, please. End it, please.
I'm not going to end it.
Oh no.
Okay, so
so-
if you'd like to keep up with what we're doing here at arkwatchers.org, then please check out secondratestates.com, our YouTube page, our Spotify. Do not try and buy that domain right now. But I mean, if you can do, that's arkwatchers.org. Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with our second-rate shenanigans. If you've got any questions, concerns, or comments about the show, we would love to hear it. And tune in for our next Thoughts in Real Time episode where we confront some of these hard-hitting opinions. Did you know the angels hid the ark?
I'm ending it.
Okay, fine.
I'm ending it.
Just end it, yeah.
You stole my chair, I steal your clap.
Well, now you ruined the clap.